Hello, hello. My name is Adam Boxer, and I'm really sorry that I can't be with you in person. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and that means that I can't do Saturdays. But obviously, it's an honour to be asked by James to participate and to be able to talk to you guys. So just quickly before we talk about before I mention what I'm going to talk about today, just a little bit about me. I'm a teacher. I teach science at the Totteridge Academy in North London. I also work in education technology, so I'm the education director of Carousel Learning, which is an online learning platform for students. And I also work in education consultancy and training. So I do a lot of CPD, a lot of inset, a lot of training, a lot of coaching, that kind of stuff. And I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. I get to kind of go all over the country and get to see lots of different schools, lots of different classrooms, and I get to learn from lots of different people. You can grab me on Twitter at AdamBoxer1, or you can email me directly, adamboxer1@gmail.com. So obviously I'm not going to be able to take questions in this session, but please, I do beg of you, if you've got anything that you wanted to ask, please do just get in touch, and I'll be happy to respond if I can. So today we're going to be talking about educational traditionalism. So I think most of the people attending this conference would not consider themselves to be educational traditionalists. I do consider myself to be an educational traditionalist, and there are lots of things that I believe that you probably don't. I'm not here to kind of convince you, really. I guess I'm not really in that business. I haven't done this kind of work. I haven't done education philosophy for quite a long time, so I'm a bit rusty. You'll have to bear with me. Most of my work now is based on really concrete classroom practice and teaching and learning and things that go on a micro level inside the classroom. I'll do my best for you guys, but basically all I just wanted to do is just present my beliefs, the things that I believe, the things that you might one day change your beliefs about, because I've changed my beliefs quite a lot about education. And I just all want you to see that I'm not a monster. A lot of people think of educational traditionalists as these fossils, these dinosaurs that aren't listening, aren't awake, aren't paying attention, or who hate kids or are only in it for selfish reasons or whatever. It would be great if I could convince you that that's not the case. This is not for me. And yeah, that's what we'll try and do today. So there's going to be a kind of structure to this talk, and the way it's going to work is essentially I'm going to talk to you about a thing that I hear. So it's really important that I don't strawman anyone here, so that I'm not saying things that nobody actually believes. So I want to talk about things that I hear. I want to explain why I don't agree with that specific thing, and then I want to say what I do believe. Now, obviously, I've set my little timer over here because I'm not great at sticking to time, and I've only got 36 minutes left, and I'm not going to be able to cover an entire educational philosophy in 36 minutes. So there'll be times that I go quite quick, there are times that I might elide, but yeah, I'm being honest with you about that. I'm not going to cover everything in the rich detail it deserves. This is an overview. This is a survey more than anything. Okay, so let's get started. What's the first thing that I hear that I don't believe in or I don't agree with? So I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this idea of a knowledge-rich curriculum. It's definitely the kind of political policy, I guess, at the moment, is to have a knowledge-rich curriculum. That started with Gove and with Nick Gibb in 2010, and it's carried right the way through. And knowledge-rich curriculum is essentially about getting more stuff for students to know into the curriculum, and less focus on teaching creativity or teaching critical thinking or analytical skills or evaluative skills or whatever. It's more about getting people to know stuff. Yeah, we'll get to exactly more about that philosophy soon, but that's what it's about. And a lot of people say that this kind of model of curriculum, there's a lot of criticisms of this kind of curriculum, and one of them is that it stifles creativity. Either in and of itself it makes creative and analytical and critical thinking harder or worse, or by focusing on this instead of that, it reduces the ability for that. So where have I heard such a thing? Because like I said, it's important not to strawman. So here's a good example. You can just have a read of that. So this is actually a recent publication. This is from Tony Blair's Institute for can't remember what it's called, Tony Blair's institute type thing, and he published this as I speak to you. He published this last week, and the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaborative problem solving, all of that stuff. This is not a new idea, right? Blair didn't come up with this himself. It's been knocking around for decades and decades and decades. And here there is a deliberate attempt to say that we focused on traditional knowledge heavy stuff and missed out on that other stuff. Where else have I heard things like this before? So this is talking about children, students. And again, this is kind of, again, the standard. This is George Monbiot, in this case, the well-known and really important environmental activist. Like, I've got a huge amount of respect for his work on environmental stuff. I don't agree with anything he has to say about education. And here he's got, we're forced feeding them with inert facts. It's very emotive language. And you get lots of this from, these are people outside of education, there are people inside of education as well who say things like this. So it's a bit long. I'll give it to you anyway. You just have a read of this. So this here is actually Mick Waters and Tim Brighouse, so fellow contributors to this conference, and they wrote this for the test. And to me, this reads like a very kind of clear kind of dialectic is the right word, but an opposition of ideas about this is what kind of Gove wanted with curriculum and national curriculum and knowledge and thought and said, and then all this other stuff that we want to do in schools that doesn't meet, about making good judgment and following certain value systems, that kind of stuff. Here's another one. So this is saying why knowledge-rich curriculum is insufficient, that in fact what we need to do is go beyond knowledge, and this is from Deborah Kidd. So again, Dr. Deborah Kidd, another contributor to this conference, and that was on her blog a few years ago, I think. And like, obviously I don't agree with a lot of this stuff, and I'll use as a springboard just one snippet from an academic peer review article. Oh, so yes, which is here. Okay, so this is about scientific problem solving. So this is a big review of scientific problem solving. It was done a little while ago, I think. I should have put the dates on this, but I'm sorry, I've been away and school's about to start, so I haven't had a huge amount of time, and I blitzed this one together when I was actually away one evening. So I can't remember which year this was, but essentially, like, the reason why I've chosen this particular couple of sentence and not any others is because it kind of illustrates the thing that I'm aiming for, and the thing that I believe in, which is that things like problem solving, creativity, critical thinking, analytical thinking, all of that stuff, for traditional teachers like me, it's important. It's crucial, and it's a valid aim of education. I want my students to be critical thinkers. I want them, I don't want them to be sometimes people say like, oh, it's because you just want them to be like these mindless proles that have just learnt stuff and been packaged up. A factory model, we love the factory model of education that just been packaged up to serve capitalism or whatever, and you don't want them to have original thought, you don't want them to question, you don't want them to ask. And then, nothing could be further from the truth. Yeah, I love my students, and nothing makes me happier than when they question me, when they push me, where they have new insight, where they show like this really deep and lovely and beautiful thinking. But this is key, yeah. And also, by the way, our assessment regime clearly does test this. You can't do, if you look at, say, GCSE science, which is what I teach, if you think of it like George wrote, that it's just about these inert facts, like, no one would pass. GCSE science is incredibly abstract, conceptual. The problem-solving element there is huge, and especially in the higher paper. As soon as you start the higher paper, it's like problem-solving from like the first minute. You get so few marks for just memory. Yeah, I've taught you X, just regurgitate X on the paper. Like you get so few marks. It's all about analyzing experiments. It's all about evaluating stuff. It's all about thinking further, and really trying to establish what's going on under the surface. And the same is true definitely in another subject I know quite well is maths. Definitely English, literature, language, very similar. You know, the assessments explicitly do test creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, all of that stuff. And without it, you're not going to get the marks. But this is the key, right? It's not just about assessments. I want them to be people like that. But the key is that the way that I think to get them there is by teaching them loads of stuff, is by giving them this knowledge, because it is my belief, and it is certainly a very strong line in psychological research, that a lot of these higher order, what are often called higher order thinking skills, evaluation, justification, critical thinking, analysis, creativity, all of these spring from a body of knowledge. And there's evidence from randomized control trials on this. There's all sorts of other sources of evidence. So, for example, I don't know, Nobel Prize winners in science, the median age has been increasing over time. So there was quite a big dip at the beginning of the 20th century where it was basically slightly older people, and then it became much younger people. And that's because everything overturns. The whole of science overturned and it became brand new. So when you lost classical mechanics and then moved into Einsteinian and quantum stuff, everything changed. And it was like, you were able to grasp this stuff and like come out with new ideas. But as time's gone on, that's got bigger. That age has got higher and higher and higher. And now the median age of like of a Nobel Prize in science is like 50 or something, because like you just need to know all of this stuff before you can innovate, before you can think creatively. It's about knowing more to help you do more, to be more creative. It's almost like knowledge is the stuff that you think critically with. You can't think creatively about stuff that you don't know anything about. I'll give you an example. Literally yesterday, so there's all this stuff at the moment in the news about space, and especially like satellites that go up to give us signal and things like that, making these constellations of satellites. So loads of different satellites that can bounce signals around from each other. This is great, right? It means everyone gets reception. You can bounce signal all over the world. Everything's fantastic. And then I like saw this thread on Twitter of this like astrophysicist guy who's like, no, this is really bad. And he like starts pointing to the numbers of how much energy it requires, for example, to get these rockets into space, and how the lifetime cycle of these of the satellites, so how quickly you have to replace them, how many of them you're going to have their brightness and the way that they ruin the night sky, the amount of gas that is produced when they take, gases that aren't just greenhouse gases when they take off, the fact that when they break apart in the atmosphere, they can come back down and cause chaos in the upper atmosphere that we don't even know what the consequences could be, or they could fall to earth and damage buildings and people and stuff like that. And I just didn't, like, my critical thinking about it was just rubbish because I just didn't know a lot about it. Now if someone says to me, having read that, now if someone turns around to me and says, Adam, what's your opinion on these satellites or whatever, I'll be able to give a good, well thought out, critical thinking answer, but I couldn't before I knew anything. So my point is not that these things aren't important. They are important, but I believe that they come from a knowledge base and not just from being taught critical thinking. It's about being taught loads of science, and from that emerges this critical thinking, this creativity, this ability to analyze. And of course, the examples I give are science, but I think it applies kind of across the board.
To see more videos like this one, visit rethinking-ed.org/reconf22. That's RECONF22. To connect with our conference speakers and delegates, you can join the Rethinking Ed Mighty Network for free at rethinking-education.mn.co. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, please consider donating to the Rethinking Ed conference. All proceeds will go to educational charities. Visit buymeacoffee.com/reconf22. That's RECONF22.